Hello, welcome to part two of the Goals I View. This is brought to you by Galaxy TQ. We've got a poll and we've got a question. We're going to go with the question first. So we asked for the sort of debate with loan players. Does it like, is there a risk that if even how good they are, think about Nest, is it going to cause an issue to the squad? Now, I'll say why, but the reason I wrote that question and I worded it a lot better than I just did it. When Nest went back, I was like, oh, he's a really good player. I very, very, very highly rate Ness as a footballer, and Smith, of course. But I think Swift's decent as well. There's a bit of me that when I feel a bit more behind it now. The fact that one of our lads who are going to come in who probably definitely aren't as good ability wise at the moment. I feel like what was going on before was it was coming like always a season where you don't feel attached to the squad. Now, for me, loan players should be you get five, you can have five in a match day. I'm a big believer in the loan market for the sort of the feeder club and the sort of loanee club. So you should have probably two or three brilliant players who should be at your level or comfortably above your level. And then you have a space for like emergency loans when you have a bit of suspension, injury crisis, all that. When you're having to decide what five loan players you want, I think that's just how does that make players, even if they're underperforming, how does that make that sort of the permanent squad feel? Because then you've got players coming in for a month, going away for a month. It's just like the Owen season. We had a lot of good players that Owen's brought in on loan. That squad should have never gone down because they had a terrible manager and terrible harmony and all that. It was all too late in the day. But yeah, I kind of felt when Nest went back, I thought, oh, a bit more. It's there. I don't know why it just sort of clicked a bit in me. I was like, oh, yeah, let's get behind them a bit more. And then you see the team, I was like, oh my God. But so Marshall's come back in, and maybe there's just a bit more of that sort of harmony. I'm not too sure. What do you three think?
Well, I mean, every struggle season we have has lots of loan players, doesn't it? I
Mm,
mean, that's one of the things you can count on, isn't it? Because the players you've already got have been dismissed or they're not good enough for the time being. So yeah, I mean, it's been a concern for weeks, especially when somebody like Scott Smith, who would walk into the midfield, can't get a game, and
that's mismanagement.
you're trying to juggle the squad around, and
And then
it's
you've
been a
got
concern
permanent
for weeks.
players only playing because the loan players who's best at them can't play because of other loan players.
So
And I just feel like it might have caused a few issues. I'm not saying they didn't play well; they were 100% playing for Johnson, but I just feel like long term, a short term fix is actually causing more long term damage and not be given a short term fix.
I
Um,
mean, the strength of the squad should always come from the contracted players, shouldn't it?
yeah,
It
and
did
then
in
a
the end
couple of
last year,
players.
didn't it?
I
And
think,
then you have two or three
yeah,
loans that just spruce up the squad and give you a little extra to
I
push
think
you
it's about
forward.
winning games of football.
Yeah,
If
Yeah,
we were successful and we were in the going for playoffs, I think it matters whether you've got one or six lone players, really, because it's
yeah,
about winning games of football, isn't it? I think the fact that you've got a lot of lone players that aren't your players, the players you've signed haven't worked out, and you're struggling, and you're in the bottom third of the league. I hear what you're saying, Tom. Actually, that it does. When you see players like Crow and Marshall, I was like, well, it's good to see them perform because that's why they've been brought in.
yeah,
So it does give you that feeling. But it ultimately comes out, like I've said, my view on it all along has been about whether what happens with the manager. It's about winning games of football, and that's
yeah.
football is that simple fundamentally,
No,
isn't it?
you're right. It's not the biggest thing, but I definitely feel, for
No, I
me
agree.
anyway, there was a bit of a thing like, oh, at least it's some of our players again. Like when I see Nest play on a 1 month loan, and so especially when we were still losing near the end of it, not blaming Nest at all because fantastic player. I'm like, I see Nest play, that's good. He'll be back to Charlton in a month. See one of our own players, Marshall, has suddenly improved. He's one of ours, that's really good. He's talking nice plays. He's moved down here probably. He's got this, he's got that. There's a long term plan. You get a bit more pride when it's not. Look, and you get special loan players. Like look at our, love for Sinclair Armstrong and players like that and Duke McKenna, but and De Silva this season and Goodwin. But like, and I was Ellis now, but like, yeah, it's too much. It's too much like the other season where you're like, oh, I wonder what players will turn up today, and you're struggling to like, you're losing it a bit with that.
but it's like every Torquay thing at the moment. It's not a long-term strategy, is it? They're 1 month
No.
loans, and they can easily
And
go back, and suddenly you have to shift your team around again. So
um,
you prefer to have players signed on for at least 3 months, and you can work
yeah.
with it,
Because
can't you? But these
what's to
short
say?
term it's just a sign of hope and desperation, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, who's to say that Ellis and De Silva will be with us in January? you like to hope they will be, because they're the two that I think have elevated us the most in recent weeks. But
yeah, okay.
yeah, it's going back to that attachment thing, isn't it? I don't really feel that much attachment to the players that we do have. I mean, the last few results have helped in some regard, especially with like the likes of Marshall and all that. But you're just worried that you're one day away from losing maybe your two key players who don't not with the haven't got a contract with Torquay United full time, and that'll be the thing for me in next month is can we get maybe the likes of De Silva and Ellis permanently? Maybe not De Silva, but maybe get him until the end of the season. You never know with Mark Ellis. Maybe we'd be able to tempt him to sign permanently, but again, he's been up north in Barrow, so it's a hard balance, isn't it? And especially with someone like Scott Smith, like you said, Dom, it's incredible that he's gone back to Wigan. I don't think we really gave him a fair chance, to be honest.
And is that going to cut ties with that Wigan link all of a sudden?
Seem to be good at that, aren't we? Cutting ties.
Funny you mentioned that. I was just thinking that the tie with QPR is quite a positive one. Obviously, we had Duke McKenna last year. Now we've got De Silva, and obviously we had Sinclair as well. So I think that's a positive. And hopefully, and if they see players coming to us, playing, developing, getting better, that will hopefully mean that they'll be happy to send players our way again. But I think you have to be relatively relaxed about it because, as Sam said, for clubs like us, loan players they're vital. They're part of what we have to do.
And I believe it helps the whole system.
And they could go back
in the loan system, but when it comes too much, that's when it's an issue.
Yeah, but you accept as part of that, depending on the terms of the loan agreement, that they could go back at the drop of a hat, and you have to accept that. And if they do, I'm sure, regardless of whatever you want to say about recruitment, if you're a manager of a non-league club like Torquay, you've always got your eye out. Gary said it before, you've always got your eye out because you never know when you're going to need to try and bring somebody in, whether it be a loan player or other than that.
Ideally, you have a De Silva signed up in the summer, like you have with Goodwin, don't you? So you have him for a season. He comes into the squad and becomes part of the squad, and you can rely on him then, and you're set fair, aren't you? But he didn't get enough of that done in the summer. That's where he's been left, trying to mop it all up as we go along. So
the other thing as well, I think it's the other thing, which is Kai, you end up with 6 loan players as well, which I think it did happen in our case because you end up with so many injuries. And there comes to like when Tommy Hughes came in and Issa Gwen from Exeter earlier in the season, you get in a situation where you've just got to have some bodies. You've got to get some players in, and you almost kind of maybe ringing managers up and going, bloody hell, who have you got? kind of type thing. And that's kind of what happened with a couple of injuries that came in, and then you end up with trying to patch up different areas of the pitch, and before you know it, oh crikey, we've got more players and I've got loan spaces. Then it was clear we had to bring in some centre backs because we were conceding goals left, right, and centre. And you can get hold of 2 loan ones that you want. You've got to get them in because you've got to plug that gap at the back. But then that means that the midfield player you brought in, who's been doing okay, Smith you can't then get him in, but you'll need to have defenders is more important, and it all becomes very complex.
It's not all like mismanagement. It is definitely circumstances didn't help.
I think the key to our season now is trying to get that settled squad. What we go, if we can add to it, maybe in January 1 or 2. Get a settled squad, trying to avoid more injuries.
It's a complete and all-rounded squad. We had a settled squad at the start, but it was just always not rounded at all.
I think as well in the National League, February is probably a more important month than January because an awful lot of January is about Football League clubs doing what they want to do. And then in February is kind of what's left, isn't it? The young players that haven't got a Championship loan move or haven't got a Football League loan move, it becomes kind of who's left and who are people then happy to get out to play some football in the National League, which is, it'll
be interesting to see if we loan any out at that point. Will somebody like Omar be loaned out at that point because we've got a number of centre backs? Will somebody like Hanson maybe be loaned out? Sorry, Chris. Just to juggle the squad around because. Well, these are players.
He'll be running the league by February.
National
League
South.
He'll be running the league by February.
It's important with these loan signings that they elevate your squad, and I get the feeling, especially with all the injuries, that unfortunately the reality is for Torquay United, you're not going to get quality. Well, you may do, but you're not going to get quality players. You'll more than likely get these youngsters who haven't had a chance or have just come out of the academy. And you've got to be smart with loanies. You really have got to be smart. I think we had this discussion a few weeks ago, didn't we? You've got to be smart, especially in our case.
I always remember Buckle saying, and I think it's the most sensible loan comment I've ever heard, when he said, kind of, you're short on numbers and you need this, you need that. Why are you not bringing people in? I remember him once saying, I'm only going to bring people in who are going to make us better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring in a player from another club who's going to sit on the bench, or I've got an option for that player already. If there's a better player who will make us better, I will bring them in. And then if there isn't, I won't, because it all
Yeah.
costs money. So,
Yeah.
and that's the most logical thing. You don't, but there are times earlier in the year, like, I don't know how much we were paying for Isigwen and, Tommy Hughes, but there comes a point where we've just got to get bodies to get 11 players on the pitch at that stage.
Read the replies to that. Rachel says it's a sign of a struggling club. It's what all struggling clubs do, padding out the gaps or temporarily replacing the lack of experience quality already in post. Not ideal at all. Very common. Tim says not if you have a massive injury list and the bottom of the league. It's also fair enough. Tim says the reliance on lone players to fill out a squad is dangerous overall. You would hope that a lone player would be one of the best players in the squad at our level by virtue or of coming from higher up. If we're using lone players to pack the squad, we have a problem. Yeah, I butchered reading that, didn't I? Mark says it's not ideal, but we are a necessary evil. Couldn't just plow on with the characters that we began with the squad with. The hole was dug before the season started. And you're right, it was a bit of a nasty thing. Like we put ourselves in the mess and we had to sort of panic through the mess, and then now it's about
in an ideal world we'd have a better squad, but we'd also have an academy where you could just bring some players through.
It's about coming out of the storm being like, no, this is the shape we're playing. We've got a balanced squad now. This is what we're playing for. I want you here. You stop playing to that. Maybe I could add a bit of quality now. Rather than
the other thing as well is with that recruitment as it was in the summer, there must have come a point, I'm guessing, but that you would imagine there would have been a point at some point at training or at some point where Downsy and Gary have sat down and they've gone, crikey, this not good enough.
Yeah. Exactly.
We've got to do something about. We've got to get some players in, or we're knackered.
And we've gone through that stage now, so they know what players they think that, or the point these players aren't getting better quickly. It's like it's not a definite at the start of the season. Think, maybe this player's not up for it. And the last comment, I think there's a stopgap to rebuilding the squad. We really need to keep the players we have and bring in permanent signings in the summer so we can bring a couple of really good loan players who can push us up the table. It's interesting one indeed. Anything else to add to that bit before we go on to the poll, the last question?
Good.
On to the next part. If you had a choice of England win the World Cup or Torquay staying up, what would you choose and why? What would you three choose?
Torquay staying up. I can go with Torquay staying up, but I'm not completely, I'm not 100%.
The thing I get a bit from right. So if it was like England win the World Cup or Torquay going up, there's no mind like I would 100% be Torquay get promoted. That's over everything. But there's a little bit of me that thinks Torquay are on the way down anyway. I don't know. I'm smiling when I'm saying this. Torquay are completely going down anyway. So I would probably celebrate.
Thanks for that, Sam.
No worries.
Yeah, cheers.
Even if we stay up this season, we're still going to be absolutely done in the next few seasons. Where if England win the World Cup, you remember that for the rest of your life. Like England, Torquay coming 20th and then getting relegated anyway in a couple of years.
Where's your fight, Sam? We're done the next few seasons. What sort of blooming YouTube episode is this? We're done next 3 seasons anyway. We may as
Realistic. I've been here before.
We may as well throw in the towel, Sam. Why do we bother?
This is what I was saying to you a couple of weeks ago. But now we've got a sponsor, so I have to keep coming back. I'm joking, right?
Oh, shut up.
Anyway,
I think it's an interesting question because in 20 years' time, what would you remember more?
Exactly.
I
love the Great Escape when we beat North Ferriby 2-0. Oh, yes.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing, I'm a big cricket fan. And I remember, you remember kind of events like winning the Ashes and stuff, don't you, from in other sports? So you would remember being alive when England won the World Cup, wouldn't you? But
I think it's just the event.
To me, right now, Torquay stand up is more important.
Of course it is, yeah. And the long term it is.
But that said, that's probably a cultural thing in England as well. Yeah. It's a cultural thing that actually your football club means. For example, I've never been to watch England play football ever. Never been to Wembley to watch England play. But I'd happily spend my money to go to Dagenham and God knows where else.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we would.
It
we would
depends what
reel
sort
it.
of supporter you are, and if you're a supporter who goes 10 games a season at
It
Torquay,
depends
say
how much
England,
you fancy Taunton and Bath away as well.
Well, there's a
I
little
reckon
bit.
it. I reckon it also probably depends on who you support. I reckon if you support a Premier League club,
Yeah.
you're probably closer to it because that's what. If you're a season ticket holder at Chelsea or Tottenham or whatever, it probably means more to you because you're closer to the players and you watch the players more regularly. Whereas to us, it's a different world almost, isn't it?
Yeah,
I just look at it and
England
think.
means
I still
England
think I
means
would
a
say
lot to
Torquay
me.
staying up, but I would probably celebrate England win the World Cup more.
Well,
That
Sam's
makes
given up
sense.
anyway. It's making a difference, does it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I look at
Consolation
it.
win the
I
weekend.
look at it. I look at it and think, right. I mean, yes, England win the World Cup, it would be great, you know, for a couple of weeks. But
Over
if we end
Christmas
up getting
as well.
relegated, but I think if we get relegated this season, it would just
I'd
hurt
be
me
grumpy
more.
for months. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with that.
Just
But can I point out something? Right, I'm going to upset. Right, you know my allegiances. Where I'm originally from, Leicester. Right, you know Leicester City did that thing where they won the league. Well, if Leicester as a city was like that for a month, imagine what the country would be. And will remember that and the Champions League on that for the rest of my life. Something like England or Torquay getting like we remember Wembley, Tim Sills at Wembley for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Where even though we go, oh, that was good, we stayed up. There's a big difference between a promotion and a title, and because we remember National League South for the rest of my, even though it was a tier below, remember like the National League South was amazing. That was like the best time in a certain set aspects. So it's an interesting.
Unlike you, Sam, I've still got hope about Torquay's future. So I would say Torquay. I mean, obviously,
if we go down it, we are in huge trouble. Like even more trouble
we're in
than
big
would be
trouble.
Anyway. More, it would quicken the process up.
it would be.
How many
if
hours
England,
do I spend on Torquay United every week? It means everything to us lot, doesn't it? So
I agree.
that's
I
why
agree.
I vote Torquay.
Yeah,
I mean,
still
of course,
probably vote Torquay.
it would probably be it'd be a great boost for the country, and you know, we'll be living off it for a few weeks. But ultimately, Torquay's a team, you know, we'll support, and I want what's best for Torquay United.
I think
and
my fear is still just like I feel we're on a declining thing. Like so I just feel like yes, it'd be great if we stay up, and we need to stay up. And I still believe there's a chance, but I just am worried. I've accepted that there's dark stuff could happen to our football club. We're seeing it with clubs all around us. Clubs that are a lot bigger than ours as well.
What was the poll result out of interest?
32%. Well, 33.1% said football's coming home, and 66.9% said Torquay staying up. So most people
about those 3 and 4 would still choose
a couple
Torquay.
Comments. Tibbs said England cannot win a World Cup. I'm boycotting. ... Please appreciate that, Tibbs. Thank you. Mark said a lot of fans who latch on to England don't deserve success. The Euro 2020 final behaviour. Torquay fans absolutely don't deserve any further misery, and I think that puts it absolutely brilliantly what we're saying. Jerry does say it's in response to that, it's only a small minority. I think we always highlighted the minority too much to support it, but for me, it's an interesting little question, and let's be honest.
One thing I would say is I've enjoyed the World Cup more than I thought I would. In the middle of the domestic season, I think, what the hell is going? Why are we doing this?
Yeah,
but actually, once you get into it, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter when in the year it is, does it? Because that basically, you know, people going to the pub and watching it with their families at home and all that. It doesn't matter whether it's the summer or the winter. It doesn't matter, does it? You know, it's been really kind of, you know, really special watching it at home with my children and stuff. And it's still great, regardless of what time of year it is. It has
actually with the weather as well. You are indoors a lot, aren't you?
So yeah, absolutely.
That's
I must say.
Go on, Tom.
I was gonna say, I've not really watched it, to be honest. I've watched the England games, but if we're going to win a World Cup, let's win it maybe in 2026 in the USA. Obviously, I have my own. Obviously, I have my own feelings towards that about the World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah,
but you know, I mean, of course, if we win it this year, great. But personally, I think it would be more to me if we can win it in 2026, where I'll probably be able to watch all the games. But that's just me. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think one more Joe said, hard one, but England win a World Cup because I probably never see it again in my lifetime, and it brings everyone together. So it's nice every 4 years. I think Torquay.
Whereas there's more chance you'll see a Torquay relegation in your lifetime again.
I just think if Torquay to stay up 4 years later, it will probably go down anyway with how the club is run.
Are you all, mate?
I understand your pessimism, Sam. I really do. I just don't want to. I don't want to accept it.
Thank you for watching this episode of Gull'S Eye View. Interesting little side debate there. Interesting. Stupid question. I wrote it. But yeah, very interesting. Thank you to all three. I was looking at myself. I'm so tired. Thank you for joining me, you three, and I'll see you next week.